Red vs. Blue, the show as old as the internet. Not really, but it has been going for a long time, 14 going on 15 years as of right now. So with 282, I believe, current episodes, that is a lot. There are bound to come some favorites, whether it be the story, the action, the impact, anything. You can enjoy everything for any reason. So, let me whittle down almost 300 episodes to my favorite 10. Sarge vs. Church in a rap battle. What else is there to say? To see an episode go from a fan-made production into Red vs. Blue history is amazing in and of itself. Jeremy not only did an amazing job when it was made a couple years ago, but now with the update of actually having RVB voices was amazing. I was impressed with not only Bernie and Matt, but I was also shockingly surprised as to how much I enjoyed Miles as Felix.
I'm a supreme know-it-all when it comes to a knife. Close-range combat's how I'm living my life. Then gobble me up with an invisible dread.
By the time you see me, you're already dead.
I couldn't help but just smile throughout this entire episode. I have nothing to comment on about the verses since it spans over 10 years of history, but this episode is just so fun and ridiculous, it had to make this list for me.
But you tried your damn best, so don't take it too hard. But it's time to sing it, Blue. You just got sarged.
While going through and picking out episodes for this list, the Sarcophagus was an episode I immediately stopped on. I didn't quite fully recall what this episode was by the title itself, but for some reason I remembered this episode and wanted to put it on this list. After going back and rewatching it, I understand why. It was a very good standalone episode, all completely animated. You have a cool fight scene with a to-be-returning villain Sharkface, you have the continuing drama with Carolina and Tex, and I think the reason I remembered the episode the most was it had one of the coolest songs in the episode itself. If I'm being honest, that may be the sole reason this episode stuck out to me. If there's one thing Red vs. Blue does better than anything, it's speeches. In this episode, this is what I always imagined Sarge could be if he also wanted. A leader who's capable of rallying his troops to fight for something that he believes in. This is the Sarge that you want, but weirdly enough, deep down, you do love his uselessness about everything. This episode just teases you with this is what Sarge could be. He gives one of the best speeches in the entire series, even bringing up one of life's great mysteries. This was also one of the first times that something big was happening that you wanted to see the Reds and Blues tackle. So while Sarge gave a speech that rallied the soldiers, it was also creating this hype to see what would happen next with the fight.
Well, I guess I'm interested in showing them exactly what a big fight is all about.
Now back when I subscribed to Rooster Teeth, I didn't watch Red vs. Blue. That's not what I subscribed for at the time. So I would see episodes and clips go by my subscriptions that I never watched. But at some point the Tex vs. the Reds and Blues was uploaded, and somehow I ended up seeing this episode before any other Red vs. Blue related video. At the time I was blown away by not only the fight scene, believe me that's one of the best choreographed fights I've seen, but I was also blown away by the views it had on it. As of right now, it has about 15 million views on it, which is still absolutely amazing. But rewinding back to around 2010 when it was uploaded and around the time I saw it, it was still in the millions of views. I remember looking at that view count and thinking that that number of views was an impressive number for something that was not a meme of the time. But this fight was just so beautifully made all the way through that it definitely deserves to be on this list.
What's the matter, Tex? You having trouble keeping it up? Don't worry, it happens to everybody.
Season 8, Episode 3, Upon Further Review. Monty's true debut episode. The moment that Warthog crashed through the wall, Red vs. Blue had this whole new breath of fresh air I didn't know that I wanted. It was just a moment that was so breathtaking and unexpected. While Red vs. Blue was game-changing in and of itself, now with the ability to animate whatever, it changed the game once more. They were no longer limited by the technical aspects of the game. They could make their own sets, make the action that much better, which it was. To no longer be limited to only machinimating was an amazing leap forward in terms of production. It was just a moment that was so stunning that it sticks out in my mind as an episode that had to be on this list.
You just got damn it, I messed up the one-liner.
Talk about a moment you didn't think would happen. It's so weird how I watched this episode. Church talked about sacrificing himself, not knowing if his sacrifice would pan out, only for Church to deconstruct himself, killing himself for the greater good. And when I watched this, I thought Church would come back as he always has, but as time went on, I began to realize Church may not be coming back. It's funny, this weird level of denial that I had. I never disliked this moment, but over time it settled in. Like, this is his goodbye, and we don't know if we'll ever see him again. It was a true send-off to a character that has been practically the main focus all these years. And to see a character who has always died and come back, die, it's a really sad moment when you learn that this was his final sacrifice.
They just have to have faith. Ain't that a bitch?
The episode that started it all. Of course it was gonna be on this list, it wouldn't be fair if it weren't. It brought up the question that will forever go down in Rooster Teeth history, and it will constantly be asked throughout the show. Episode 1 of Red vs. Blue changed everything. At some point when making this list, you have to take into account not only how good of an episode it was, but also the impact that the episode had on the outside world. This episode basically popularized a whole new style of animation, machinima, with a little m. While this definitely made Halo one of the most popular games to machinimate in, it made people think of how to use other games to create stories that the game wasn't intended for. It had an amazing impact on the outside world while also for the time being revolutionary. So somehow episode 1 of Red vs. Blue managed to make us all care about these idiots doing nothing. And boy did it work.
Hey. Yeah? You ever wonder why we're here?
You talk about an episode that has both a sad moment and an amazingly choreographed fight scene, True Colors has got to be on that list. This episode shows why Carolina is the best of the best. From going to a shotgun to hand to a friggin' grenade with a grappling hook, Carolina adapts to whatever she needs to do, and it's so badass. But then we get the Reds and Blues actually contributing to a fight and being badass while they do it. This episode is what we all wanted. We all wanted to see the Reds and Blues kick ass, and they do that in this episode with flying colors. Now, I also did mention that there was a sad moment in this episode as well, and there is. Church essentially lies Tex to rest. After all this time, all these iterations of memories, this is where Church managed to finally say his goodbye to Tex. Their world, long time. Our world, 10 years. It's a very bittersweet moment, accompanied with a very badass moment that had to make this list.
Look, I have to go now, but you just rest, okay? Goodbye.
Few moments will ever give me chills every single time that I watch it. The director's speech at the end of this episode, without fail, will give me chills every single time.
Sincerely yours, the former director of Project Freelancer, Dr. Leonard Church.
Oh, the music kicks in, which absolutely sells the moment of the director's name reveal. It's too badass of a moment to be a simple message to the chairman. But somehow, it was one of the best moments ever to come out of Red vs. Blue for me. While that was one of my favorite moments ever, this was also a very pivotal moment for Red vs. Blue because this is where Church died. He would later come back as Epsilon, but Church, the Church that we've been following for 6 years at this point, died similar to Season 13's The End. Church sacrificed himself, not nearly to the extent of absolute deletion, nor did Church think he was going to die, but it was a sacrifice to take out the meta and the AI, which it did. So it was not only an important moment in the series, but it was then accompanied by hands down one of the best speeches in Red vs. Blue history.
When the EMP goes off... When it goes off, I'll be fine. It only affects computers, remember? And I am a motherfucking ghost.
Season 10, Episode 22. Don't say it. The finale of Season 10 is unlike any other episode from any other series Rooster Teeth has made, in my opinion. It's unlike any of the others because I would classify this episode as perfect. This is the only episode that has ever left me with that feeling of perfection. It could not have been improved in any way. And the best thing about this is the fact that it wrapped up 10 years of a story, and I thought it was handled phenomenally. Carolina finally confronts her father with all the shit that he's done, Epsilon being furious for everything that he's done to wash the meta Tex himself, So many were hurt because of the director's fantasy of bringing Tex back. And even seeing the director watching that clip over and over because that is literally the last time he ever saw Allison. And even that clip that he's watching was absolutely perfect. Lindsay Hicks did a phenomenal job at it for someone I myself only saw in one RT short at the time. The thing I love most about the director watching that clip over and over is that it went just beyond being the last moment he had of Allison. Not only was that true, but the real bittersweet thing about that moment is that he's still trying to recreate her. He is still trying to bring her back from the dead. And that is the extra step that made it go above and beyond a typical trope. Usually there has to be an extra step for a moment like that for me to sympathize with it. And in this episode, it was handled with excellence. I sympathized with him. I honestly didn't know who to quote-unquote root for. It's sad that he's still trying to recreate his lost wife. But I didn't want to see Carolina kill him, but I wanted to see Church get his closure. It was a bag of mixed emotions, but in my opinion, it perfectly closed 10 years of a story, and it couldn't have been handled any better.
Your past doesn't define who you are. It just gives you the starting point for who you're going to be.
So there you have it. Those were my, or at least I think, my 10 favorite episodes from Red vs. Blue, so far at least. By the time this goes up, season 15 should have already started, but be sure to let me know what your guys' favorite Red vs. Blue episodes are and why. And if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you're interested in more content like this, and I'll see you in the next video.